Welcome, viewers and listeners, and thank you for rejoining us here on the Level Set. I'm in the studio with Larry Fields, attorney extraordinaire. Dr. Charles Alexander is with us in Chicago, Illinois. Mike Jones here in St. Louis with me. And we have a guest today that we're very excited about having on, man, because we were talking about something last week, and this brother can come on and I think extend and deepen the conversation. Joining us today is Brother Kwabena Rasuli. He's an African-born brother from Los Angeles. He attended college at the University of Louisiana and Southern University, finishing with a degree in mechanical engineering. His brother's a 30-year resident of Gary, Indiana, and one of the founders of the United African Movement in Gary, Jackson Family Honors, Black Lives Matter Gary, and the Clear Airwaves Project. He also organizes with the National Black Leadership Alliance and the Nubian Leadership Circle. So let's jump into it, man. We were talking last week, and I thought it was a lively conversation with some different points of view. Larry, you were out. But we got on the topic of entertainment and music and how it impacts our community. And for me, especially, I was focusing more on how it impacts young people in terms of how it hits, how they receive it, and how it shapes thinking and thought and action. And so, Brother Kwabena, I want to come straight to you. Give us some sense of where you have landed in terms of all of the work that you've done over these years and your understanding of how music impacts in our community, and what are our responsibilities really as it relates to our artists.
Well, music is like culture, and culture is everything, you know, from the way we prepare for our unborn to how we bury our dead. And one of the biggest parts of our culture is our music. You know, we as African people, and you know, even all people just love music and how we deal with music. And you know, one of the things you didn't talk about that I also do. I'm a DJ. And
Yes, sir. I forgot. Yes,
no,
go ahead.
Been doing that for a long time, and it's just to hear and listen to and see this music, and it's just amazing. It's unbelievable. It's just sometimes I'm at a loss for words. I'm gonna be flowing in a minute, but just if you just listen to this crap, if you just monitor this crap, it's just totally out of control. Every time my children, and I mean every time my children tune into a radio station or put some earplugs in their ears or listen to some music, N-bombs are being dropped on them. Every time, multiple N-bombs are being dropped on them. They're being told that their mothers, that their sisters, that their aunties, that their grandmothers, that their daughters, that they're a little older, are B's and H's. They're being told to be materialistic morons. They're being told to slang drugs, be alcoholics, to take drugs, and to shoot and kill each other in our music.
Yeah.
And it's just totally unacceptable. It's dangerous, and we're seeing the results of it every day.
Yeah. Hey, let me say this, and then we come to the panel quickly. And kind of the frame for our discussion last week, if I can give it to you accurately, was that we understand that there are systemic issues that shape the violence in our communities as well. White supremacy is a constant, and it's ever present in outcomes that are produced by the systems that white supremacy produces. And my point last week was, having said that, even within that context, I see that we have a responsibility. Our artists have a responsibility to us as a people not to add to the pain and suffering that is delivered intentionally to our community by then shaping thought and conduct in young, impressionable folks who lack real guidance in many instances toward exactly what you describe, especially the death of your brother being your mission in life. There's got to be a way for us to reach them without letting white supremacy off the hook, but at the same time saying, time out, brother, while all of this is going on, I don't need you in the house with us bringing poison and destruction.
I think you're missing the boat. And I don't mean that. Because this isn't coming from the kids. This is a system that's producing this.
I said that, man. No. I just said that, Larry. I just said we have a
Okay,
system in
but you're
place.
talking about,
I'm talking about how it
no,
impacts
you're talking
young
about holding our
minds.
kids accountable.
No. I'm talking about holding artists accountable, man.
Okay, if you're talking about holding artists accountable, you need to go up a rung. These are, and I'll give you an example. When was the last time you heard the F word, faggot, on a record?
I don't listen to. I'm not on those stations, so I don't know.
Well, I do. I listen to it all the time, and it hasn't been since the '90s because they made a systemic choice to eliminate that. When was the last time you heard anything disparaging about the Jews? You don't, because it is a systemic issue that the powers at play do not allow it to operate. When Michael Jackson said, "Kite me" on that record, Steven Spielberg called him and they shut him down. So, the artists, I'm beginning to, and this is an issue that I've pondered long, because I think there really needs to be class action lawsuits against these individuals the same way as there were against the cigarette companies, because they're just as deadly. Music is metaphysical. Music gets into your spirit, and that's who you become.
Yes,
it's not
it
like
does.
a movie.
Yes, it does. That's right.
With this motivation, they know exactly what they're doing. They're producing the exact outcomes that they want to do. If you listen, you can go and get any of the top 50 records in R&B right now, and they're going to glorify commercialism because they want you to spend all of your money.
Right.
They're going to glorify killing. They're going to glorify hiring Jewish attorneys. They're going to glorify disrespecting our women. But when you turn the TV on tonight, you're going to see the leading ladies, and a number of these shows are going to be black, with the leading men being white. So these are systemic issues, and I understand exactly where you're going, Reddy, and I don't think you're wrong. But I think that we cannot. I think our babies are made to put that information in those songs.
But Larry, and let me come to Dr. Alexander, because this is important. We covered that. See, you missed us last week, man. We touched on
I'm here today. And
all right, but we touched on coming all the way up. Listen to me. We talked about going up, and therein lies the challenge, because they don't produce themselves. These people who young artists and middle-aged artists, whoever they are, that put this in the community, are not producing themselves for the most part. They have someone over them who is sanctioning and green lighting this for the very reasons you just outlined. It's intentional in terms of the damage that it's doing to our communities. So it would involve some level of sacrifice. Dr. Alexander asked me last week rhetorically, who am I going to ask to stop feeding their family? In terms of the entertainers and rappers who put this stuff out, who am I going to ask is to cut your check off and stop doing that and start doing this? What needs to be created is a space for them. And this goes to something you talk about all the time, Larry. We have people who are in position to create that kind of space. Money, folks in athletics and everything else, who creates a space where it becomes incentivized, there's an incentive in existence financially for somebody to come with a conscious, positive message to our people, versus the only way you can make money in our arena is to sell that poison. We talked about that. We covered that ground last week.
I was literally thinking not about this in a different kind of construct. I'm arguing a larger construct today. And I agree that everything starts and stops with culture, okay? Because culture defines who you are as a human being, who a people are as a people. So I pose a question for you guys to respond to. First of all, can you be aesthetically pro-Black in the highest definition of however we would individually define that without being anti-capitalist? Okay? And I would argue that at one time in our history, our development as a people in the United States, we had a critique of the system. We were not necessarily, matter of fact, we produced intellectual cohort that actually critiqued the American project relative to us and what it meant to us. And they consistently came away not being advocates of laissez-faire libertarian free market capitalism. And for me, be careful what you ask for. We asked for civil rights, and our ability then, we still had structural racism, but we got rid of American apartheid. So the place looked socially more liberal, but it had not structurally changed, even culturally more liberal. And our sense of self as a community, our relationship to each other, how I define myself as an individual back to us as a group, all of that has, and I can say that just because I've lived through it, didn't always think about it at the time, but now retrospectively, I think about it. We dismantled what sustained and defined us as a community for 100 years through Jim Crow. And I would argue the community we were, writ large, would be better suited to be going into this new American space than the community that we have become. That in exercising some individual options of folk, let's call it freedom for lack of a better word. I don't particularly care for the description. We have internalized literally everything that's bad about America. And we now are as American as white folks, which makes us in a lot of ways just as bad. And before civil rights, with Jim Crow, with apartheid, we had a self-contained culture. I'm not talking about the physical, legal limitations of who we are, but I'm talking about we produced a culture that spoke to our humanity and what we needed to do individually and collectively to sustain ourselves as a people and as a person. And literally, I can say now retrospectively, I've watched us, not white folks, I've watched us dismantle that whole apparatus because Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte catch a plane to Mississippi or Alabama to deliver the bail money, get chased through the South, got to kind of escape to deliver the bail money to Dr. King and them. And I cannot imagine Jim Brown, Bill Russell, Lou Alcindor before he was Abdul-Jabbar, literally put their careers on the line in support of Muhammad Ali. I cannot imagine today a critical cohort of artists, athletes at that level, with the level of insecurity that they have confronting the system. Jay-Z got lifetime stupid money. If the NFL wanted him, he could have redefined that whole relationship if they needed him. So, and there were movies Sidney Poitier wouldn't make because of how they reflected on Black people. And literally, we've lost what I would consider, if we haven't lost our moral capacity, we've damn sure lost our moral compass. And we are as lost as the people we now mimic.
Let me come to Brother Rasuli again. Looks like we lost Dr. Alexander. I'm hoping he can rejoin us because I know he's got plenty to say on this. But Brother Rasuli, Brother Rasuli, there's a theme that has run through this show among several themes, but the idea that Mike just described of folks in positions of influence, cultural influence, actors, entertainers, sports folks, they're finding a critical mass among them to finance a move in a different direction in the entertainment space. This Clear the Airwaves project I want to hear some more about that. I'm guessing, and maybe I'm guessing wrong, but I'm guessing it has something to do with content and how to deliver different content. Have you seen anything on the horizon that gives you any sense that there is the possibility to create a meaningful space that could reach the masses like that?
Yes, yes, of course. I do want to say, Dr. Alexander, I did hear him, so he is with us too. But,
oh, okay, good.
Like one of the things that we've done, we work with a group called Rage Against the Ratchet out of Philadelphia early on when we started the Clear the Airways project. And we started after Hydea Pendleton was killed when she traveled from Chicago to DC to speak, not to speak, but to sing for Barack Obama's second inauguration. And she came back and she was killed right outside of Martin Luther King Academy. And so that's when we started the Clear the Airways project, even though we had been organizing and struggling with this violent crap before then. And our project's goal, our mission is to get that violent, vulgar, pornographic music off of these radio stations that specifically target our children. And I mentioned Rage Against the Ratchet because they were doing the same thing in the Philly area. And one of the things that they did was they had the Wilmington, Delaware City Council pass a resolution condemning the ratchet killer radio stations in the Philadelphia area. We did the same thing here in Gary. As a matter of fact, we have a resolution that's been sitting dormant. It's already been introduced in the largest city in the country, New York City. Out there is sitting dormant in their city hall chambers, condemning the ratchet killer radio stations that are in New York. And I think that would be a great move once they finally hear this resolution and pass it, because it gives us opportunity again to go at sponsors even harder and what have you. But the thing also that we have to look at is like the mayor of New York. New York's numbers have gone up a lot, and he equated it to the drill music that's been, so prevalent now in New York. And we talked about Bob Law, who we worked with the National Black Leadership Alliance, has sat down with the mayor before he was mayor and talked about the situation. But he gave credit where it was due to this ratchet killer music. But then we find out that his son works with Jay-Z. Your brother mentioned Jay-Z earlier. And so he meets with some rappers, and we hear nothing more about the drill music. He comes to Chicago, which is the home of this killer music, this drill music, and has a press conference with Mayor Lightfoot, specifically talking about the violent situation, and they say nothing about the music. So I don't know if people are scared or what have you, but we don't care because our sisters are scared to even go to the gas station. A lot of times our children are scared to go out and play. And so, so we have to do something about this. So we think once New York gets that, and more of us deal with these situations because they're obvious, and we're starting to get more and more people who are understanding that it is the music. And what we have to understand is that we can put a stop to this madness, and we can put a stop to it, and we have to put a stop to it.
Yeah, Dr. Alexander, I'm coming to you now. And just for clarity, brother, I don't solely place the impetus for violence in our communities on the music that our kids are listening to. I think there's so many systems that shape those kinds of outcomes, and they are rooted again in systemic and institutional racism.
Well,
I do think the music influences that. But Dr. Alexander, I want to come to you because I know you've got thoughts on that.
I know. Can I just respond to that real quick?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I get you guys were talking about it earlier, but we don't let them off the hook. We know who the puppet masters are. So we know that like the radio stations we go after, these are European-owned radio stations. iHeart is European-owned and controlled. And these radio stations pretty much have all the stations in Chicago and New York and LA that specifically target African children. So no, they do not get let off the hook.
Okay. Dr. Alexander, I know you've been waiting.
Yes, thank you, Reddit. And Mike Jones, to the point that my brother made. But this is a part of why I wanted to invite him on, because I know that he's on the front lines fighting this fight, and I think we all agree that the lyrics are inappropriate. And I think where the point of disagreement was last week was that I believe going at the artist is low-hanging fruit. Not that they don't have responsibility, but the issue is with the industry and the sponsorship. And so one of the things that I know that occurs with the Clear the Airwaves movement is that there's a 2 to 3 prong approach. And so we're gonna have this conversation with the artists, but we're also going to boycott, the stations. We're
Okay.
also going to boycott those high level,
Okay.
those known sponsors.
Yeah, that
And
makes
so,
sense.
I know that there are, standing boycotts where Clear the Airwaves is doing its work against, certain entities. And I'm not going to say the certain entities' names because I'm not going to give them that
Right. Free advertising.
Yeah, but
On there.
but that's how this piece has to be. Certainly, we want our artists to be more aware and more conscious and more
Yeah.
accountable. But again, we can't just tell that brother or that sister not to do what they're doing, and we can't replace,
Right.
we can't replace that piece. But if we have an impact on the whole thing, on the system, then ultimately everybody has to change. Now that might take a little longer,
Yeah.
but that is a strategic move that actually puts the onus in the place in which it should be. And it is the industry and it is the sponsors of the industry. And, I'm sure, and Kwame, now you can speak to this. There are a number of brothers who, and I'm sure again, sisters who, if you sit with them and talk to them, they can show you, they rhyme book, and they can show you all this conscious rap that they wouldn't get no contracts for writing.
Mm.
And then the people said to them, no, this ain't, we ain't paying for that. And so then they flipped the script and they did what they had to do in order to get paid. Now, some of them get in and get back out. And that's great. They get in, they get that, they do it for as long as it takes for them to start to see, some revenues and some residuals. And then they flip the script and either they start to write different or they just move differently in the industry. That's great. But we can't just go in wholesale and tell these guys to shut it down and then don't give them another
Right.
option.
And that's my point about, is there a space like Mike described prior when you had Muhammad Ali, Harry Belafonte, all these high level people, Jim Browns, the old Jim Brown, not the new one, that got in there and supported something versus the people we have now. Is it viable to think that they can do financing for something like that? And is it sustainable? Let's say you and your brother successfully create something that allows artists to produce conscious rap and present it to the masses. Is it sustainable? Is there a market for it? Or have we been so conditioned in terms of self-hatred in the music that it wouldn't be accepted by us? We wouldn't.
There are certain people who are doing that. And,
okay.
And they live in that way. And again, Kwame, he spends, weekly. He can tell you who some of these conscious folks are who live within the means of what their product
produces. Some names out. Hey, let's put them out there, man.
Big Red, D1, Young Khan Adam. We got Sister Sarak. Brand still making conscious music. Arrested Development still making conscious music. Black Star, Most Def, and Yassine Bey and Talib Kweli just had a new album finally that just dropped. Public Enemy is still putting out good music. There's so many there's so many artists. Lupe
The Roots, Black Thought.
Right.
Yes. There's so many artists who are still putting out good music and what have you. And they have an audience, but they're not flashing with the money, the $100 bills going down their wrists and things like that. So
right.
I want to say about these artists, because we talk about that too. We don't let the artists off the hook. We again, like earlier, we know that that they're just puppets. However, the system don't let them off the hook when they get busted for rapping about who they didn't kill, or when they get killed, they're not let off the hook. So we're not gonna let them off the hook. And however, but we know who the real puppets of the real people are. Like for instance, we just had a whole bunch of murders. They happen every week. And then Saturday Night Live, after I think this dude went and shot a bunch of people, and people shot all over the place. And on Saturday Night Live, they brought a rapper named Gunna. His name right there, Gunna is his name. And Future, we call him No Future. They were on Saturday Night Live playing this song that's played all the time called Poppin' Peas. And on the first line of Poppin' Peas, Future drops says, I copped a new hammer for my piece. We don't want no peace. And the GQ names him, these Europeans at GQ names him as the greatest rapper alive. A couple of years ago in Chicago, and this is another point we gotta make, we gotta share this. The NAACP nominated this song for an Image Award, this song called Life is Good. On Life is Good, Future raps that he's gonna shoot up, the person he murks, which is murders, he gonna go to pay somebody $20,000 in drug money to shoot up the funeral. And the NAACP nominates that for an Image Award.
I wasn't aware of that. Mm.
And so again, the one of the reasons why I so appreciate my brother is that he goes in and he deconstructs rap. He goes in and does rap literacy. So we talk about literacy all the time. You know, we got folks. So we got X number of folks who don't even know what these songs say. Even if they know the lyrics, they don't know the implications. You know, so most times folks are responding to the beat. And then sometimes they love the beat, they know the lyrics, and they don't necessarily know what it means. So when Clutter Airwaves is doing projects, they're actually going in and saying to the folks, did you know that this is what this is? Did you know this is what that is? And actually laying out for the adults as well as the young folks who are listening to this stuff, what's being said. But again, the piece is that there's enough responsibility to go around. And so
yeah,
we got to get at, so to your point, Reddit, we got to get at the artists, but we got to get at the industry and we got to get at sponsorship. And we got to be diligent in that regard. Yeah. And it's up to us. If we say we don't want ratchet music, then we got to hold up the people who are giving us other than that. That's on us. True.
Because you know as well as I do. And like I said, I'm not really listening to it like that, but I already know just on life experience, every song I might listen to and be critical of, if it drops in the club, no matter what the age group, they'll be on the floor. I already know. So, yeah, man. It's relative to the project that you have put together. Is there an opportunity for it to expand? Can you go to other states with it, other cities with it? Have you been in conversations with anybody about doing something like that in other places beyond Gary and Philadelphia?
Yeah, we went to CMOTAP, which is the Committee to Eliminate Media Offensive to African People out of New York. So we worked with them, and they hooked us up with the National Black Leadership Alliance. We also work with Nubian Leadership Circle. Hold on a second, sorry.
That's all right.
Excuse me, and a bunch of organizations. I mean, you go to LA and do presentations. We are in Louisiana. So, you know, this is a national movement, but you're right, we do need to expand. But we're part of the Nubian Leadership Circle. As a matter of fact, we're having our 5th summit this coming Saturday from like our time, 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock our time, NubianLeadershipCircle.org, check it out. We have, there's like 8 different cadres, and we're part of the arts and culture cadre. And as a matter of fact, in terms of alternative, we're starting a elevated arts and culture collective where we have people to join the collective. You have to pledge that your art is not going to be art that's going to be demeaning and degrading to the people, that your art has to uplift the people. That's part of the pledge. And so we got a collective with that. So we're doing that this Saturday. So we're trying to expand it. And but our main goal again is to get that crap off the radio. We've gone to the FCC just recently as last year and filed formal complaints against the 2 killer radio stations in the Chicago area. One is the iHeart station, one is the Crawford station. And the FCC, the feds, the Federal Communications Commission, which has decency standards, they said we uphold the First Amendment right to free speech. However, because our children may be listening between the hours of 6 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night, you cannot play indecent and profane content. And they let them have a little leeway after 10. But they say obscene content is never allowed. Never. But when I turned the radio on in Minneapolis last week, and I hear the baby talking about he gonna piss in a cup and tell her it's lemonade at 10 o'clock in the morning, that's obscene. And that's what they put our children constantly, crap like that. But anyway, the FCC sided with WGCI out of Chicago, the iHeart station. And they also sided with the Power 92.3, the Crawford station, against us. They dismissed our case against both of those radio stations.
Tell me, did you brought an FCC complaint against them?
Yes, we brought a formal complaint. You can see some of it if you go to our, it's on GoFund. Matter of fact, you can go to cleartheairwaysproject.org. We brought formal complaints against them. Their lawyers had to respond to us, and we rebutted their response, and we responded to that. And the FCC we had to force, our congressman had to give it to the FCC to make a decision. They were just sitting on it.
Let me ask you this while we have you, because this is one of the most encouraging things I've heard all week.
Me too.
And I am so, brother, I don't know you, and I feel cheated that I don't know you. Aside from your fraternal organization.
Say thank you. Say thank you. Say thank you. Say thank you. Say thank you.
I feel cheated that I don't know about the work that you're doing. Thank you, Petey, for bringing this brother to the forefront. First, give us your social media information. Information about the conference that you're having. Can we attend that virtually and so forth, sir?
Yes, it's a virtual summit. It's Nubian Leadership Circle.
Now, people spell Nubian different ways. How do you spell it?
Nubian.
Okay. Some people spell it with a K.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, there's Nubian with an N, Nubian Leadership Circle. .org. And matter of fact, you have to register. So we need to get registered because it's in a couple of days. It's pretty powerful. Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. will be our keynote speaker at this one. And we've had in the past, Dr. Cornel West, Minister Farrakhan have also been our speakers for these pieces. So it's a virtual piece. And yeah, please come on, check it out. But Clear the Airways Project, you can get with us on Clear the Airways, cleartheairways.org. And we have a big presence on Facebook, Clear the Airways Project. And this is a big monster. And me and brother Dr. Charles, Dr. Alexander, we worked together with our recent ancestor, brother Kwesi Ron Harris. And I heard brothers mention the tobacco industry, and we defeated them beasts when they were trying to use hip hop to get more smokers. We put a stop to them. And and here in Gary, which is a struggling city, struggling big time, the second largest private prison group came in here and tried to put a private prison in here, and we put a stop to them. So we can beat these so-called giants if we organize and unite. And the music is like a really big giant. We know what we're up against, but they have to be stopped because it's totally out of control what they play constantly on the radio. Y'all got to hear this song called Gremlins that they play right now with Kodak Black. We're having a problem right now with carjacking all around Chicago. This fool in this song brags about jacking cars, and they play it all the time. Jacking cars, and I'm gonna murder you with witnesses. He don't care, and they play it on the radio all the time.
I don't listen to Kodak Black, and I don't listen to Chief Keef. I've never listened to them voluntarily after the first time. And so my second point, the second question to you is, what are the other outlets that these children are listening to? Because my children, my youngest at this point, it will be 19 this year, but they don't listen to terrestrial radio. And they have totally different playlists than I have. So where else should we be monitoring for this information?
Well, all them satellite radio stations, they play the stuff unedited straight up. At least the killer radio stations, they play it. They try to edit some week, because I don't know what, but they do try to edit it. The edits are horrible. So they children get it through all sorts of ways that they get the music. They get in the movies, they get it on their portable listening devices, and still on the radio somewhat. The thing about the radio that's so important is that people are listening to this stuff at the same time. These same low vibrations that are going on these stations are being broadcast throughout, and people are hearing them at the same times in their cars or wherever they are. So, we know a lot, many people don't listen to the radio as before, but there's still an audience for it. And so, and our strategy is if we get this crap off the radio, we'll have to start playing more of the conscious artists, more than rap, because mostly all our children, all they force me to our children is rap, and our children appreciate way more than just rap music. And I'm not DJ rap music. Our children appreciate the whole spectrum of music, but they're being force-fed, and like the brother said earlier, programmed just to keep on ingesting that crap, and it's killing us. So our thing is to righteously get it off the air, because it shouldn't be on the air, straight up violent porn that they're playing for our children every day, offensive violent porn, and replace it with some music and content that is uplifting, that's fun, that's uplifting the mass, that's loving us, music that loves us. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Brother, what time does your show air?
I go from 6 6 to midnight is weekly wrap up conscious hip hop. We do conscious hip hop and classic funk. So after the hip hop, a couple hours of the hip hop, we bring that classic funk to the people.
What
And
station?
so folks they can get your station on terrestrial radio, and they can also listen Facebook Live, right?
We got to get that Facebook Live back together, but we also streaming. It's a Gary Community School. Yeah, Gary Community Schools. It's schools. It's WGVE is the radio station. WGVE is what
Yeah.
we.
And if you can go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. That was it.
No, I was going to say,
Put
if you
that
can
in
come
the
back
chat
on the
for
other
us.
side of the break, if you can come back on the other side of the break, we'll put all of that information out again
Okay.
for everybody that's,
You can
because
put
we
it
got to
in the
go to a
chat,
break right now. We're
And
going to go ahead and go to a break.
before we go to break, let's mention that attorney JT Christmas has joined us.
Oh, good. Excellent. Charlie Parker in the house. Let's go to break and we'll add Gerald Christmas to the discussion on the other side of it. Come on back. Welcome back to the Level Set, and thank you for rejoining us here. Before you go, Brother Kwabena, go ahead and put your information back out there one more time for those who want to engage with you, your program, or some of the work that you're doing.
Okay, it's the Clear the Airwaves Project, cleartheairwavesproject.org, or check out our presence on Facebook. Also, I mentioned the Nubian Leadership Circle. We're having our summit this coming Saturday, May 7th, 9 o'clock Central to 2 o'clock. It's going to be dealing with a bunch of different issues like land and food, arts and culture, economics, spiritual renewal, health and education. Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. will be our keynote speaker. So it's a virtual event online. So come on, check that out too. Check that out at nubianleadershipcircle.org. Brothers, I appreciate y'all having me on, man. This is such an important conversation. I hope I can get back and build with y'all even more.
Oh man, you got an open invitation, man, anytime.
And perhaps what Brother Kwabena did not tell you is that his last name is Pratt, as in Geronimo.
All right.
All right.
All right.
All right. Is there a relationship there?
Yeah, that's my uncle, Uncle G. Uncle
Oh,
Geronimo.
wow.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay.
I thought you sounded familiar.
All right, man. Well, thanks for
All right,
joining
my
us,
brother.
man. We
Thanks so
appreciate
much,
you. We'll
man.
see you again.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, good brother. Yo.
Yo, I know y'all ain't like that.
Hey, hey, fire,
Yeah.
fire, be more. Oh, this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Meanwhile, as me and Mike sit here resting in the glory of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, we're going to add one more voice to this mix. Brother Gerald Christmas has joined us
Did you notice
from Phi Beta Sigma. The
you notice
panhandlers
we
on the
resting? We don't get to rest. We working 360.
Gerald,
Go
where you
ahead.
at, Gerald Christmas?
I'm here. What's happening?
Jump in, man. And we had a great conversation going. You would have loved it, man. I hate that you were not able to join us when we started. I know you got work out there. But we were talking about, talking about that industry again, man. And I was hoping you could weigh in with some of your insights, because I know you've had some definite opinions on that.
I caught the tail end of it, and I definitely feel it. I know where he's coming from about all of this negative marketing in our community. You know, I've been trying to pay much closer attention to it because it happens on a subtle basis all the time. When you ride around our community and you see the advertisement that talked about the cigarettes, the liquor, the drug paraphernalia, all of that is being constantly marketed to our children. And unfortunately, it increases our criminal load. You know that, Ready, from working in the circuit attorney's office. You know, especially as we come upon this time of the year, as the weather begins to warm up, we have more and more incidents that are happening. And a lot of that is fueled by the music, is fueled by the constant liquor and drug marketing that's happening. And I was glad to hear that he's pushing back, because that's the real problem that we're having. You know, like Mike said, it's the lack of structural integrity. We don't have anybody pushing back. Nobody wants to put it on the line. Like when you talked about Harry Belafonte or Sidney Poitier, we don't have people at that level that want to challenge this system. They rather be a part of the system and go along, even though it's killing us. They don't want to challenge the system. And that's the whole problem we have right there, right now.
Yeah, Colin Kaepernick comes to
So
mind.
question. Are we gonna go at Dave Chappelle?
On
What
which
did they
issue?
do recently?
Excuse me?
On
Did
which
Dave
issue?
do something recently?
Dave do something every time he speak. Who says Ian more than Dave?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So
I
if we
got you.
mad, if we mad at the
I
rappers,
got
are
you.
we mad at Dave? When they
I mean,
beat the dude off the stage yesterday, Dave came back on talking about that Ian. Right
Mhm.
now, I'm not one that says N or N word. I say the word,
Right.
but I know we can get in trouble, so I ain't doing it. I don't like
Right.
the word. I think it's condescending. I think N and N word are condescending because
Mhm.
if you say N and N word, you thinking the other word. So why we even do
Yeah.
that? But
Yeah.
if we ain't going after Dave Chappelle, my point is why we going after the mother folk?
On that
And-
note, though, I would say, in terms of content, I think the concern greater still than just the N word, which is proliferate around our culture and our society right now, is the other messaging, man. It's the murder message.
All of it though, Red.
It's the murder
all of it.
messaging, man. I'm
It's
more
all of it.
concerned with the murder
But it's
messaging
all
than I
of
am
it.
with them saying the N word.
You can't get to the murder if you don't start with
But
the
is
self-hate.
Dave out
Brother,
there saying that? Though?
Brother, no.
Yeah,
You
he's out
can't
there
get,
saying it. I
you
didn't know he
cannot
was talking
get to the
specifically
murder.
about the
You
N
cannot
word,
get
but
to
he's
the
definitely out
murder
there saying it.
unless you start with the self-hatred. And so I'm only bringing up Dave because he gets a pass. I don't have no vested interest in you going after Dave. I'm just
Right.
saying that ain't nobody going after Dave.
Yeah.
That's my point. And so, are we going after Snoop?
I see the point that you're making.
Ain't nobody going after Snoop. And
Is he still making music like that?
I mean, the reason that he's doing beer commercials now is because of the music
Right.
that he made.
Right.
And I'm sure he's still getting guest spots. I don't know that he necessarily producing stuff, but I'm
Right.
sure he's getting guest spots. And then when he getting guest spots, he dropping
Yeah.
B's and H's.
But what
And
I'll
so
say is,
that's
I
how
don't
he
know, but I don't know as
No,
this
for sure. He was just
movement
here.
gains momentum. Listen, Gerald, as this movement gains momentum, I don't know that they are necessarily exempted. I think the movement is in such an early stage in terms of people who are trying to coalesce around the idea of changing how our entertainment is delivered, that if we don't know who's on or off a hook yet, nobody's on the hook yet. It's really just a level of discussion around what needs to happen. And then you start to look at who's involved. I think ultimately, no one is exempt. If we have a standard, then we have a standard.
Which should be. But the other piece is, and that's why we can't simply just go at these folks. We do have to say there are alternatives.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
We have to be thoughtful about those alternatives.
For sure.
And we have to put those alternatives. Now,
that's real.
Right now, there's probably nobody who has more publicity than the Roots. But you don't never hear folks just talking about the Roots. Black Thought is on every night. He come on every night at 10:30.
Literally the top. Well, I think that I would. There was a span of about 8 years where if the Roots were within 400 miles of wherever I was, I would go see them. I think that they have been homogenized by being associated with that Tonight Show.
Now they're too commercial, right?
Right.
But their content has not changed.
It has not.
Yeah. And there's still nobody who want to step on the mic with Black Thought because he will lace you.
They're not going to do a cipher with
nobody want none of that smoke.
Nobody wants that smoke.
And so some of this is the fault of the consumer too.
True.
It's not that there is not it's not that we don't have choices. It's that we make poor choices.
I don't think I don't think the consumer knows that there's clean water that exists. I really don't, because there's no way you could be a true fan of hip hop and ever hear Black Thought and go back to these mumble rappers, in my opinion. Go ahead, Mr. Jones. I'm sorry.
No problem. I want to go back to Charles's point, because the point he made for like 2 weeks is that everybody owns some responsibility,
right,
to this, and that fundamentally the liberation of a people starts with some kind of self-liberation of the individual. So that the responsibility that a Jay-Z had is not the same responsibility as the average person on the street, but everybody is responsible. I think his name is Rabbi Abraham Herschel, and he got this great quote: "In a free society, all are not guilty. Everybody's not guilty, but all are responsible." And that's how we got it. There are those among us who are guilty of things, but we are all responsible for the condition that we're in, and don't nobody get a pass. And since we got some ball junkies here who've all participated in some.
You froze on the screen, Mike. We all froze on the screen. No, we didn't. Can you all still hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
I got you.
We'll come back to Mike.
Accountability.
Mike, you got to repeat some of that because you had froze for a second, about 30 seconds.
I said, really, this particularly goes to your wheelhouse. Competitive team sports at a high level requires three things: role acceptance, accountability, and trust.
Yeah.
I'd argue that a community requires all three of those things too. You have to accept your role in this community. You then are accountable for how you function in that role. And everybody in that community has to be able to trust that you're going to execute your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens, the sum becomes, the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. When that don't happen, we just some disparate individuals that come together from time to time, find a way to cooperate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that hits it, man. I lost my train of thought because Dr. Alexander had said something that really resonated with me because of its universality. And I wished I had held on to it, because I was just saying in a different interview on a different topic how important it is for us to I lost the damn thought. Gerald, jump in there, man. I lost my train of thought.
It's gonna happen more as you get older, man. Don't
yes,
worry
it is.
Yeah.
You know what? I got so into what you were saying, I forgot the hell about what I was thinking. That means I'm a good listener. I'm not listening to respond. I'm actually listening to what's being said. Gerald Christmas, you still there?
I think I was
you just like listening to the news.
Dr. Alexander was saying about the N-word. I think, so much of it starts with that, because it's not just the word, it's the whole mentality that comes along with that. And that's what the problem is for me, with using it, and not only is it the N-word, now it's the B word. Because, right outside my office, I listened to, two women getting into it earlier today, and they was both going back and forth with the B word, and they use that just as common. And it's just this whole idea that, you would be comfortable with.
How about the attorney muted himself?
He muted himself.
Right.
So much of the problem lies.
Sure. You got to repeat some of that because you had just muted yourself, man. Repeat a little bit of that.
My phone was ringing. It was cutting me off.
But it's just a dehumanization of an entire culture.
Yeah, we are the only people that have been socialized to publicly degrade ourselves. And you talk about.
I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure that's true. We say that, but I'm not sure that's true. I am sure that.
Who else do you know that's going around doing it?
Brother, Latino people do this all the time. They don't like each other.
They may not, but I don't. Well, maybe
it's because brother, if there was no rap, you would say this didn't happen. And the fact of the matter is that this was happening before rap. That's the truth.
Yeah,
this ain't new.
I'm not just talking about the rap though. I'm talking about in comedy, in
that's how it becomes
television.
And so again, we are there's a film.
And
that
then I
everybody
really
should
can't be
watch.
concerned about the
Hold
Latinos. I
on,
gotta
attorney.
focus on what's our issues and how we can get ourselves out of the hole.
Hold on,
I can't.
attorney. There's a show that everybody should watch. It's called Ethnic Notions. It's about 20 years old. It's by a brother named, I think his name is Marlon Riggs. His name is Marlon Riggs. And it's about caricature. And it is about the use of the Black image historically for the things that we hold rap music accountable for now. This didn't start with rap music. This probably starts with blackface. This probably starts with Al Jolson. This probably starts with TD, I forget this guy's name, TD something.
So you talking about the guy that produced Birth of a Nation?
No, not D.W. Griffin, but this other cat who's responsible for, who they say is responsible for blackface and the Jim Crow shows. I just can't remember his name. But if you watch this movie, it's called Ethnic Notions. It speaks to this whole thing. So all of this heat, all of this responsibility that we heap on rap music has just become the latest iteration. All of this started where everything starts, with white supremacy.
Yeah.
So you remember growing up watching Bugs Bunny, and they talking about Camptown Racetrack and all that kind of stuff, and they got blackface, and they got caricatures of caricatures on those old Looney Tunes. They got caricatures of what's my man Step and Fetch It on Looney Tunes. They got caricatures of Black women on Tom and Jerry. And so rap music is just the latest iteration. It is all bad, but let's not act like the degradation of Black people in general and Black women in particular started with rap, because that is patently false.
I don't think anybody's
saying
that.
with rap.
I don't think anybody's saying that.
We just got a different medium now, which is able to expand the reach of it. That's different from that time period. And then, like Mike said, we had structural integrity at that point that we don't have now. So that's
people
why
were not happy with Step and Fetch It. But he kept doing what he was doing. So did we have was that cultural integrity?
Yeah. Listen, I remember what I was thinking about, man. My thought came back to me. I'm gonna jump in right quick.
Together and push back on those things. We don't have that pushback happening now at all. Go ahead,
my thought came back to me, man. Here's what it was. Listen, what you said, Dr. Alexander, was, and you've said it before, about this idea of having something for those people that we may be able to reach in that space to sustain them. I can't take this from you and not have something for you. And that is universal. I was talking about, somebody was talking to me about law enforcement the other day. Why don't more Black officers and officers from marginalized communities, create that critical mass and start challenging the system? Well, they need to do that, but they would have to be supported. In some instances, they may lose jobs or whatever, promotions, whatever. What do we have to replace that with for those people who would be in that space working in our interests? And that goes across industries, that's in education, pick an industry. That's a reality. So it still seems to me that there needs to be a better organized effort, and we need to find whatever outliers are out there with the means to begin creating those kinds of resources for people who are willing to fall on the sword.
It also goes back to what Mike Jones tells us. Resistance. That's what we got at our disposal. We got to fight because it's in our interest to fight, not because we're going to win.
Right.
Right.
So we won't fight
right.
if we don't think we're going to win.
That's right.
We got to fight because it's in our interest to fight.
Well, but you can't say that to one of the rappers that we would be asking to do something different. We can't, or can we?
No, but because we can't just say it to the rappers, we got to say it to everybody. That's my point.
But who's answering that? Who would answer that call?
And
Doc, I don't know if I understand now, because when I presented that, It's like, yeah, but what do you
You know,
have
I'm
for him
saying
if
we
you
gotta
ask him
say
to
that
do it?
to
And now you're telling
everybody.
me it's
That's
just
why
about
I
the
brought up
resistance.
Dave Chappelle.
Hey, really, and
Yeah.
Charles, I'm gonna tie you two. I'm gonna connect the dots between you two because you're both right. Okay, and believe it or not, you're both right simultaneously. And I would back us all the way up to ask the Larry said the existential metaphysical question: who are we, and what is America to us? And if you start there, and what depending on how you right, and depending on how you were raised and who raised you, you understand the world has that. You won't learn this in Sunday school, but there are two kinds of people in the world: the players and the played. And when you ain't a player, you being played. Period. So our problem is we've become marks in America because we believe the story, we believe the kind, and whatever that myth, stories, narrative is about America is for suckers if you ain't rich and white. So what you got to do is figure out how to take the nickel and keep the game going. Understand you playing them while they think they playing you. And as long as we got bourgeois, middle class, Judeo-Christian morality, you ain't gonna survive in no street game. Cause that just ain't gonna get it done. And we are in a street game against some criminals. So that means you got to function like they function. You don't have to beat them, but you got to be up to what comes with being in the environment with them. We have to function like we're lions and they're hyenas. And lions don't let hyenas get close to their baby. And male lions instinctively will kill a hyena if it gets close. He don't even need a reason, just that it's a hyena. And by definition, it's a threat. The coldest thing I've ever seen, and I'll make this short, on one of those animal National Geographic things, pack of hyenas got in a territorial fight. The lead hyena in one of the packs got injured, back broke or something, and it was laying there dying. And the male lion, after the fight, came up on the hyena and sniffed it, looked at the hyena dying. You were looking at it thinking, but the lion's gonna finish it. You know what that lion did? Laid down next to the hyena and watched him die. Now that's how cold you got to be. Yeah, I could finish it and make it easy for you, but I think I'll stay here and enjoy it. And until we develop that kind of mentality, that kind of toughness, we go always get played. So,
but how we gonna develop that?
Huh?
How will we develop that the way we intertwine with them now? You know,
I don't know. And see, that's what I said before, that the Black community before civil rights was much better situated to deal with America than the Black community post civil rights.
Right.
And that's what I wrestle with. Huh?
Because the only thing that changed was this thought and notion of choice.
Right.
So post civil rights, we thought we had a separate or a different set of options, and we acted on those different set of options, and they're not necessarily in the best interest of the masses.
Right.
Hey, and on that note, we're gonna have to wrap it up, man. Thank you again, brothers. Always a pleasure, man, to spend time and share some thoughts with you all. I'm hoping that our viewers and listeners have enjoyed the show as well. We welcome you to join us every week at the same time here on The Level Set. We'll see you next time. Say that one more time.
This meeting is being recorded.
And for those of you who are going to join us on The Level Set after the show, you can go on over to our YouTube channel. We'll be over on YouTube. And for those of you who are departing, we'll see you next week right here on The Level Set. Mike, you had a thought that you were sharing with us about how at one point culture in our community was about preparation and giving us what we need to be okay. I wanted you
Yeah,
to kind of elaborate on that a little bit.
and for our YouTube viewers, we basically like a jazz group. So Level Check was the show. This is the jam session. So this is this is when we play for ourselves. Okay, this is not for the show. But
Boy,
no,
that is an incredible definition. Boy, that was way to explain it.
in when we were talking in the show, literally though, we were talking about culture, and to understand culture in an anthropological sense, culture is the totality of the human experience in a society, and culture is your music, it's your art, it's how you relate to each other as individuals, but it's all the systems coming together, and it's designed to do one thing. That is to protect and prepare you to exist in the world that you're going to go into. And since I'm the old head in this, I actually got a chance to live in a different Black community, grow up in a different Black community than I currently lived in or have lived in for the last 45 years. And the Black community that, if you're 73 years old, that you grew up in, had a culture that was about protecting and preparing Black children, particularly Black boys, for who they were going to have to be when they entered the world, a hostile white world. So literally, you didn't have to have programs. The entire ecosystem that you lived in was all about reinforcing everything that you had to know to have a chance to be successful as a Black man, and getting you ready for that. And post civil rights, as we started to feel that we had individual choices and we started to act on our individual impulses, and I'm not knocking that, the unintended consequences of that was we started to dismantle physically dismantle the community that we came from. And with that dismantling, we also dismantled the culture that prepared us and got us to the point that we could do what we were doing. And what we are looking at 50 years later is the consequence of that. And so the real question for me, as I look at it, is not what you do about rap, what you don't do about rap, what you do about the B word or the N word. The real issue is how in the third decade of the 21st century, 2022, because we can't go back to 1950, 1960, 1970. That time has come and gone. But how do you reconstitute those values, those things that we as Black people need in America to survive and be successful? Charles said something earlier in our off the record before we started recording again about you don't fight because you win, you fight because it's in your interest. The way I kind of have a way of saying that is oppressed people win when they resist, not when they overcome. And so we had a culture, an attitude of built-in resistance. We knew we had to hang on to our Black self in spite of America. And we no longer know how to do that. We don't teach that. That's not in our culture. We have internalized the same value system that average white, middle class, working class people have. And that will never work for us because we're the other in America. We're not accidentally excluded from the American definition. The American definition was never to include us. And in fact, our otherness is a necessity of their social cohesion. They can't be who they are without an example of who they are not. And every time you're right. And every
That's
time
James Baldwin.
right, every time things get shaky for them, we get picked on. And there's a term for that. It's called scapegoating, and it ain't just walking around it. It's a whole sociological theory. It's a whole body of work.
Structure. And that's what every caste system is built off of. Every caste system has to have that. We have got to reject everything that America espouses and reevaluate everything, because as Francis Crest stated, we don't even have homes anymore. We have survival units, because a home helps every individual inside of it exploit all of their talents.
Yeah,
And
man.
so when we go back again, you know, when we were talking about Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier, the one thing about those brothers and those sisters in days past, they knew that all they was entertainers.
Right.
These folks now think they've arrived.
They think that they are just because
Max Roach in the Freedom Suites. They knew, even when white folks was coming and pay to see them perform, that's all white folks was doing, was coming to see them and perform. And they was taking that money and they was taking care of their families and they was funding the movement.
Charles,
and these folks now they're not willing to do that.
Charles, to that point, when the Black Panther, no, the sister, UCLA.
Professor?
No, Angela Davis.
Angela Davis.
When
she's not actually a Black Panther, but go ahead.
Right. When Angela Davis got arrested, Aretha Franklin said, "I'll pay her bail. Yes. I don't care what it is." Now, Aretha said, "I make money because of Black people."
Right.
I ain't doing her no favor. I'm who I am because of us.
Right.
She's working on her. So they didn't have to pay us. They didn't have to have a rally. Aretha said, "I'm rich. Whatever it is, I got it." And base what? I don't need white folks' permission because I make my money from Black people.
And look at this. Now, the vast majority of rap artists, I've heard Ice-T say this a million times. And, this lie. 85% of rap is bought by white folks. You're a lie. I've been in your concerts. Your concerts on 85% white. It reminds me, I had a kiosk with Negro League gear on it back in the 90s. I had several of them, but I had one in Northwest Plaza. And down the road from me was this brother that sold hot sauce. And the brother that sold hot sauce thought that he had cachet because he tell me 90% of his customers were white. And I'm looking at you, the days that I work, brother, that's a lie. That's a fantasy you're telling yourself for some ignorant reason. But we don't even tell ourselves the truth about that. And we go and lie about the strength of the Black dollar even.
Yeah, one of the urges.
Larry, but to that point, Larry, it does matter where that is occurring. I've been to Jay-Z concerts and been in the minority, and so it does matter venue and things of that nature. But in the whole thing, the person I was trying to think about earlier today, in the previous segment, T.D. Rice. So T.D. Rice is not the father of minstrelsy, but he's probably the best paid minstrel. And so what we got right now is minstrelsy. But what that did was establish a legacy of what we're seeing and what we're seeing played out in rap music. And so again, we have to hold those guys accountable, but it's not just them, it's all of it. And we got to fight all of it. And again, we have to resist. Right. And those folks who are not on our team, we got to resist them too. So we got to resist Jay. We got to resist whoever is not on our team, whoever is not moving in the interest of the
man. I'm a businessman.
They on the other team.
Right.
Mike, you talk about the culture, and you kind of frame it pre and post civil rights. Pre being a time when we recognize culture as something cohesive that we all innately understood, participated in, and benefited from. One of the things that's urgent about this moment, as it has been so dissolved, the dissolution of our culture through intentional actions over time, is the success of those who have always attacked our culture from the beginning in different ways. Initially, it was through, murder, force, family separation, and everything else. Now it's through policy choices. But the roads that would allow us a return of any kind to the kind of culture and cultural solidarity that you describe are being blown up every day as we speak. CRT, no critical race. We don't want you to learn shit. We don't want you to know shit about what you were, where you came from, what happened. We don't want you to be able to vote.
I got
we don't
nervous
want you to
for a
be
minute,
able
then
to
I
work.
realized we were on YouTube. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is YouTube. All of the roads are being blocked and fairly effectively because of the lack of resistance in those spaces where we need people to resist, elected leadership and other places. The urgency is, do we have enough resistors to make a difference going forward, man? Are we at a critical point? And I don't know that we have done a good enough job of preparing folks in terms of awareness of what the hell is happening to recruit the best of the best to our fight.
Yeah, Larry, go ahead.
No, Mike, you go ahead. I'm gonna come after you.
You always paying me too much deference, man. You had an open shot. Charles?
I can go.
Yeah, no, I want you to
So that is an awesome question, Red, and that's a part of the problem, because we act like that there was this time when we had enough. We ain't never had enough.
Thank you, Charles. That was what
and
I
so
was
we
gonna
act
say.
like back in the day that everybody was running into the streets to do this work. That's just a lie.
Right.
It ain't never been enough. It ain't never been enough, and we need to stop telling that lie. We need to stop telling the lie about
maybe
back
I
in
didn't
the
frame.
day, how
Maybe
we
I didn't
all
frame
went
it
and
right.
did whatever because we
Wait a
did.
minute, man. Wait a minute. Maybe I didn't frame it right, man. What I was alluding
No,
to.
I'm not saying that you. No, Red. I'm not saying. I'm not saying you, Red. I'm saying this is what happens, and this is where that question kind of comes from. I'm not saying that you said blah 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 blah. I'm saying this is where the question comes from. The question comes from this space that we believe that there was this time the Black folks was all in. That time ain't never existed. We've always had folks who went out and fought regardless of who came with them. And
I understand
we got
that.
people that to do that.
I understand that, but what I was alluding to, Mike, is the description of culture that you gave, not who resisted or who did it, and if we had enough or not.
Here's how I've learned to look at it at this point in life. And part of it is, once I'm no longer trying to figure out how you make it day to day. That's the one advantage of getting older, retired, is you get time to reflect if you want to. I mean, if you decide to use it that way. And if I ever write a book, I'm gonna call it Upon Further Reflection, because it'll be about what I now think about what I used to think as I was going through it. But here's the point, Rick. We think that this moment is the first time this moment ever happened. And this moment has happened over and over again. Matter of fact, to be Black in America is Groundhog Day writ large. That you can start from.
Boy, that's the hardest hit little old baby in town, isn't he? Lord have mercy. He must have been one dog. They must have had him as the one dog. He's out front. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, what I mean is, if you start from the beginning, wherever you want to call the beginning of America, and let's eliminate 1619. Let's say these white folks got to start all over again in 1776, 1787, when they did the Constitution. They could say whatever the stuff the British put on us that we inherited, we're going to start this new thing. First thing they did in order for them to come together was to cut us out and then put us in this space that we couldn't get out of. Now we start figuring out how to do it, and we got Charles Allen and ultimately a Frederick Douglass and we're resistant, but we're resistant while a guy like John C. Calhoun is building the real premise of America in the 1830s, 1840s, that fundamentally says that the division in America is not rich or poor, it's black and white. And as long as you are white and function in this system, you are part of the ruling elite. So what you're looking at is white folks, marginalized white folks, who were being screwed by capitalism, figuring, but I'm white. As Chris Rock said in Women in Stand Up 20 years ago, he's a black millionaire and the crippled white janitor wouldn't trade places with him. Okay, that's how invested white folks are in whiteness. So if you even look at this period, there's literally nothing that Ron DeSantis, Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell, and all of them are doing today that didn't happen in 1877. With the compromise that started the deconstruction of Reconstruction. So we keep acting in our ignorance of our story. And because we believe the bullshit that they say about America and the founding and all of that, that's a creation myth. That's a heroic story that ain't true. If you really want to know who the founders of America are, you got to go to the politicians of the antebellum South, who were the first generation to come of age, to be born in America after the Revolution and the Republic was founded. And think of and listen and read what they're saying about who America is. They ain't never considered it a unified country. They always considered it a confederacy, a federation. So it's our ignorance of all of this that allows us to keep being played every day.
Right.
We keep believing we there, like you said, 3-Chord Molly, we keep thinking that we know what shell the money is under, the P is under, so we can win the bet. We ain't gonna never win the bet. The game ain't set up for you to win. Anytime you win, it's because the people playing you wanted you to win so they can play everybody else. If you don't learn to think like a hustler, and a hustler thinks either I'm gonna play them, they gonna play me. If they got a gun, if they bigger and stronger, then I gotta figure out how to steal this from them because I ain't strong enough to take it from them. Our problem is we go through these cycles and we have never gotten ourselves, we forget how we got here because the stuff gets a little easier and we think we have arrived because we believe the bullshit that they say about themselves, which ain't true.
Let me say this though, because
when they
what you
start
all
doing
said,
this,
what you both
and that's
said
what they
makes
say,
sense.
Mike, when
It
we
makes
get
sense
when stuff
a
jump
lot
off.
of what you just said. I understand it. And the framing that you both gave it, Dr. Alexander and Mike, excellent. But I'm gonna see if I can put a finer point on what I was proposing, because it wasn't as complicated as that. What I was saying, Mike, was I believe, if I'm understanding you correctly, that there was a point in time, these conditions have always existed. There's been no point in time where we were monolithic, everybody was all in, ready to fight and do it right. But I believe that there's been a distinction made over time on our show relative to the condition that our community was in psychologically, emotionally, collectively, more broadly than what we have now, which is an absolute reflection of the dissolution of our culture to an extent that it wasn't in those same years we talking about when everybody wasn't on board. But Mike, when you say the culture gave you what you needed, it used to give us what we needed to a greater extent, to a greater extent than it does now. Then what have we been talking about, man? Maybe I haven't been listening. Hold on. Maybe I haven't been listening to all these shows, man. When he's talking about what it was when it was, and what it is now, is that distinction no more?
Black folks talk about Tulsa, right? Tulsa happened when?
In the 20s.
1920, 1921.
1921, right?
Yeah.
What happened in 1919?
East St. Louis.
East St. Louis.
Everything, right? The
Right.
red summer. And so we focus on 1921 and Black Wall Street like that was the life of the masses. Black folks been getting killed since Black folks been here. And we need to quit acting like there was a time when that was not happening. That time never existed.
And I'm gonna answer
people. Everybody's not acting like that though. That's not the question at all. I mean, that's unrelated to what I posed as a question.
You just said that, Red. You just said we keep getting to this point.
I'm gonna answer your question.
I was talking about the culture that had been described, right? The culture that had been described as a nourishing entity.
That culture existed.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm gonna answer your question.
Do you think that it exists to the same extent now as it did then?
That culture always exists, but that culture exists within the context of white supremacy, which is what we were talking about before.
To the extent, I'm asking about extent.
What extent?
There's an extent to which it existed then that we talked about in the past.
This is the fight, bro. This is what it looks like.
For a minute. Wait a minute.
I can't let it go, man, because you always saying this shit for months, man. And now it's different. Now it's different. Come on, man, with that.
I'm gonna literally answer your question. The problem is integration. You can't teach Black kids what they need to know in the middle of white institutions. What we had was proximity, okay?
So it was different then, correct?
Jerry L, get in there.
So it was different then. It's what my point was.
Yeah, it is.
It was different then. Period, man. No.
It was not different then. That we already covered that. That was a matter.
No. Let's come back to it. What I was saying was that it was different then.
That is a false premise. Black folks who had means was dealing with Black folks who didn't have means because Black folks who had means didn't have no choice before.
Right.
Mike, maybe I didn't hear you correct.
So no, it ain't different. No. It ain't different. It's the same. Those brothers were constrained, and because they were constrained, it looked different. But the shit was the same, and we need to quit saying that it was different because it's not true. It's just like people talking about we had all these businesses and banks. We ain't never had shit because that's not how this is set up.
Wait,
no,
but Charles, my point is that because of that restraint, it produced a different set of circumstances.
That is true.
That facilitated us being a certain way.
Yes.
With the change in those constraints, that's when we started the dissolution of what had sustained it. Because my position is, we may have never been a community, that the Black community, the foundation of the Black community was white oppression. We were thrown together and made ourselves community out of necessity. We didn't choose each other. They chose us and threw us all together, and then we had to figure the shit out.
We didn't like each other on the continent. That's how some of us got here.
Right. So, but what I'm saying is, so we created a response to that white oppression,
right?
That became what we know historically as the Black community.
Right.
I call civil rights the end of American apartheid, not the end of structural racism and white supremacy. So we just softened the social environment and the cultural thing and made it look more liberal. Now, you didn't change none of the power equations. You just made it possible to do more ordinary things. And in that illusion, we then took advantage of something we never had the opportunity to do, to make individual choices independent of each other. And we started to do that. And
that's what we see now.
Which is different than it was before.
With professional politician, that's what we see, these folks who seek their relative interests and not the interests of the masses.
Which is different than it was, man. All right.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's not.
The conditions.
That's a
the
false
conditions.
premise. That is a false premise, Reddit.
Well,
They
then what
didn't.
did you
They
just
did that
say,
because they
man?
didn't have no
Either it
choice.
is or it isn't, man.
It's a false
It's a
premise.
new thing that you just described, or
No,
it's not.
no. That is a false premise. They did it
Which
because
is
they
a
didn't have
false
the
premise.
choice.
They
The
what?
thought that we were not unified. We had to live together because the legal system provided that constraint.
I
Okay,
don't know where
Charles.
I'm losing. I don't know where I'm losing you.
Charles, here would be the
You're not
nuance.
losing me. I disagree with
Wait.
your premise.
Wait a minute. Here would be the nuance that I would put to it. We were never unified, but nobody could escape in that era, that 100 years. You couldn't escape the consequences of being Black.
Absolutely.
We weren't unified, but we were together.
Huh?
We together.
Absolutely. Which is
Yeah.
that is a true
We were
statement.
together.
Because
We-
white
That is a
folks,
true statement.
will
roommates.
remind you that
We
you
were
were Black
close
every time
roommates.
you go try to think
You
that
can
you
go
weren't.
back. You can go back and you can read some of the documents from some of these organizations who fought for whatever they fought for. Like I'll go out on a limb and suggest to you that Homer Plessy didn't necessarily care if somebody that looked like me rode the streetcar. Homer Plessy could pass. He did this so people who could pass could ride the streetcar. He wasn't really tripping about me. And so much of that stuff that happened between whenever and whenever was about that too. It was not about necessarily the masses. There's a significant number of folks who were seeking relief for folks who look like them. And those was folks who look like you, Reddy. And so that was the piece. And it wasn't about us. It was about what they could get. Now, because at the end of the day, we all Black, when the laws got passed, they applied to all of us. But that was not necessarily all those folks' agenda.
Mhm.
Charles, to that point, and here's why I say you're right, but I would like to say it in a more nuanced way. The civil rights movement was Black masses creating benefit for the Black middle class, because the only people who could really benefit from the civil rights movement was the Black middle class who had education, and they moved
Fraser
up.
was criticizing
Now,
the whole time. Yes.
Because civil rights did not attack the economic injustices and foundations of it. And Dr. King understood that, because at the time he gets assassinated, he is consistently moving Black progress into the where it can't happen without economic justice, and capitalism is questionable forever producing that. And also, you got to be against American colonialism and imperialism in the world, because a country with that moral basis will never do the right thing about Black people. That's why he did by 1968, and wasn't popular nowhere before that. So,
including with Black people.
Right. And so our problem is we struggle with that. So Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, you got brothers trying to figure out the theory of the case if you're Black. We got some lazy ass pseudo Black intellectuals that talking heads on TV and ain't got shit substantive to say about nothing. You can literally go a month without watching the news, and when you come back, you will find that you ain't missed shit. Okay, so the reality is, I defy you to find the Black punch. And we always talk about we want to see Black folks on television, and we do get a lot of Black folks on television talking about the same bullshit that white folks talk about our demand. And here's the thing that got me totally pissed off in this moment, is to hear Black folks talk about our democracy. And I want to say N-word, it was American democracy that made you a slave. They voted on that.
Big
shit.
government.
They put it in the Constitution. It wasn't illegal. Ain't no goddamn magic to democracy. I mean, democracy, and ain't no magic to capitalism. Capitalism is what I got our asses on the boat over here to work. Okay, so you have embraced all this stuff that has been the tools of your oppression. I can't think of the sister's name, but I can always remember her quote. You cannot dismantle the master's house using the master's tool.
Audre Lorde. Audre
Audre
Lorde.
Lorde, right, exactly. That's our problem. We are no longer looking for the tools to dismantle the house because we ain't interested in dismantling the house. And that's the gut. If you start with saying the house needs to be dismantled, then you'll start looking for the tools to do that. But if you ain't trying to dismantle the house, you ain't gonna never find the tools to do that. And therein is the guts of our problem.
The tools come out of necessity, right, Mike Jones?
The tools come out of the necessity of the objective.
Gerald Christmas, you still there?
I'm here. I'm soaking all.
We're gonna go around and give some closing remarks. I'm gonna start with you because I know you've been patiently standing by, bro.
I'm chiming right in with we got to keep fighting. We have got to keep fighting. We got to talk about dismantling the house. That has to be our focus. And we have to fight because we need to fight. We have to continue to fight. And that's what's necessary. We just do not have enough people that are willing to put it on the line and to fight these issues and these oppressive laws that are coming against us, and just what happens to us in our everyday life in dealing with society. But we have got to push back, and we've got to push back hard, and we've got to be the ones that's doing it. You know, when we had these conversations, we have to take this further than just these conversations here on the show, but we actually have to take them out to the entities that we deal with and push them to fight ourselves.
Right, for sure. And I think I'm sure that everybody on this show is doing that beyond just, the conversations and dialogues we have here on the level set. I know that in our personal lives and professional spheres, we are actively engaged in trying to address those systemic issues that have to do with white supremacy and institutional racism. Dr. Alexander, coming to you.
Thank you, sir. And I'm rolling with Gerald. So this is what this is. This is why we level set. We try to give people, kind of that fundamental basis about what it is that we're up against, where we came from, what occurred, how we got here. And, as Mike Jones is laying out, this is kind of how it's been looking. And so we got to stand up and meet the challenge. And we got to create, we have to create that critical mass, whatever size that critical mass is going to be. We are responsible for it. If we think it doesn't exist, then we have to also bear some responsibility for the lack thereof. And so we have to present that information necessary for the people to make informed decisions about what is in their best interest. One of the things that I think people have to understand is that when we go back in time, all of this stuff, it's policy decisions. All of this stuff is codified. All of this stuff were federal, state, and local laws and edicts and rules or whatever that govern the lives of Black folks. This wasn't some little redneck cat, on a farm who just didn't like Black folks. This was the system. This is the system. This is the life we live. Resist.
Larry Fields.
Man, I agree with everything that those folks have said, but I'm going to be slightly myopic, man. I appreciate you guys on the show. And this think tank, this was probably the most, I won't even say contentious, but I think this was the most debated show that we've had in quite some time. And I think that the listener and observers will benefit from it. So I just thank God that we're in a space to take advantage of these minds. I thank God that we still have folks like you all and our guests today that, and I'm going to include myself through the grace of God and that number, that are focused and sold out to our communities and to justice and to righteousness. And not afraid to walk in that, and that have made sacrifices, everyone around us, because we all, everyone on this screen could make substantially more money than we do if that was our thing. But justice and righteousness and fairness to our community, and in many cases to underserved individuals, is our thing. So I just want to say how thankful I am for you all and how important it is for us to continue this work.
Yeah, Mike Jones coming to you.
All right, I'm going to say, in a lot of ways, COVID is the best thing that happened to the show, because it created a cohort for us to talk about this stuff, and you didn't have to keep figuring out who's going to be an in-studio guest every week. But for me, more importantly, and whoever thought of the after show, you or Larry, I'm grateful for, because
it was Larry.
We kind of do the show as part of the show, whatever the topic is, and then we would have these sessions like afterwards. So I did say it's like a jazz musician. He said, why do you go to work at the club? He said, so I'll still be awake for the jam session after everybody gets off of work and we meet up. And so after we warm up, we then literally have over the last couple of years engaged in these more intense debates about, like we just had, that I think are truly illuminating and trying to bring some insight, and the passion that people would have felt in the last 15, 20 minutes is just part of the passion that we're all bringing to this. And for everybody who said, I think the one cultural aspect that will have to accept and get over, that when brothers are together and they get going, we go talk over each other. So one of the skill sets that you learn as a Black boy listening to Black men is how to hear multiple voices speaking at the same time. So for everybody who don't know about that, I have to apologize. I'm sorry about that, but that's a skill set you're gonna have to pick up if you're gonna keep running with us.
And let me close out with a under 1 minute comment, man. I believe it was one brother on this panel, or all of us at different points in time, that have made the statement that, revolution is an inside job, right? It starts within yourself, and the opportunity that we are giving each other every week, man, to, steel sharpen steel, and we learn from each other, we motivate each other, because I know the work that you all do outside of this show is impactful and meaningful in the community. I'm hoping that this show can become a similar vehicle for other like-minded individuals, man, who join us here every week and walk away ready to resist in an informed, strategic way, knowing that, your cause is greater than yourself. So I'm always appreciating this opportunity every week, man. I appreciate you all's insights and input, and I look forward to it. And we'll do it again next week.
God willing.
Amen.